Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We are gonna start in a few minutes. So take your time to grab a cup of coffee or whatever you like, and we're gonna move forward.
And we have an exciting discussion today.
Oh, we do.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, if you look at it every day, there is some new SaaS application that solves new problems. And I think even with the generative AI, I was on a call earlier today, and now they make both chatbots that will take any conversation you have and transcribe it, and another one that will go and automatically, in certain, like Slack, for example, respond as it was if you were there. So pretty soon we'll be able to drink our coffee and not even come to the screen because there'll be AI doing it all for us.
Doing for us.
Yes. Then pretty
I'm
soon
not
they'll
sure
realize
though
they don't
whether
need
I
us,
should
and
be
then
happy or I'm not sure though whether I should be happy or upset about that.
well, it'll be fun until they come after us. I'm thinking Skynet.
All right. So let's begin. Today we'll focus on IT professionals and business leaders struggling with costly and complex data protection solutions. My name is Marcin Łukasik, and I'll be your guide through today's session, which is, by the way, interactive. And that's why I invite you to actively participate by posting your questions in the chat throughout the webinar so that our experts would be able to address them. Speaking of, let me introduce my esteemed guests, Robert Callaghan, Senior Product Marketing Manager, Wasabi, Martin Fan, Field CTO, North America, Catalogic. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Okay, Robert, Martin, would you like to shed some light on what Wasabi and Catalogic are doing in terms of shouldering the burden of creating a robust data protection strategy for many companies?
Sure. Thanks for having us. Wasabi is we like to call is the leader in hot cloud storage. We provide cloud-based object storage that is both secure, cost-effective, and performant. And we're glad to partner with Catalogic as you provide a lot of technology that will use us. And we'll talk more about that without, spoiling it. Martin?
Yep. Appreciate that, Robert. And thanks for joining the webinar as well here. So this is with Catalogic, we are a data protection company, and we have been in this business for nearly 3 decades now. So from a data protection standpoint, we've grown up within the industry. We've seen how users are running backups and how they're making use of those backups, what they're asking for. One of the big things in the area of data protection, data storage today is being able to take advantage of some of the infinite storage resources that cloud can offer. So, which is why it's great to have Wasabi on the phone today to help share their solution and how we can integrate in with Wasabi.
Wonderful.
As I said at the beginning, today we are going to talk about hardships related to costs and complexities of data protection solutions. Robert, tell me, why does it matter so much?
Yeah, I think that why it matters is that there is ransomware everywhere. There are cyber criminals everywhere, and they're innovative. They continue to figure out new ways to extort money, to shut down businesses. As you can see here, I mean, there's a number of ones in the US, for example, where it has impacted their ability to generate revenue, to manufacture products, to even, and the one in MGM is crazy enough where it shut down everything. And they said, I think the last time I saw it, it was over $100 million in losses. You couldn't get into your room. You couldn't use the phone, couldn't use the slot machine or the ATM, which that one may have saved you a lot of money. You couldn't get out of the parking garage. And even one of the things you can sort of see in the picture is that the bathrooms were all connected by IoT to make sure that they were running correctly. They shut those down. And then the police got shut down. Clorox is not able to manufacture cleaning supplies, and so their profit took a big hit. And you think that, well, you know what? I'm in the cloud. The cloud's got my back and stuff. That's not necessarily the case. As you can see here, Microsoft, which is one of the big three hyperscalers that both offer, applications as well as storage in the cloud, is not immune. They've lost the keys. The government got hacked. They've had outages in the key applications that we all use to be productive in this environment. The Microsoft Office and all those applications, OneNote, SharePoint, all that stuff. And then for grins, I went to their generative AI and basically asked about when that data is protected, who's protecting it. And all they claim to do is protect the infrastructure, the applications, the environment. But as to the data, they're basically saying it's up to you. It's this whole shared responsibility. So you can't trust that. So you need a great partner like Catalogic to make sure that it is protected and is recoverable. And then one that I just saw yesterday is LinkedIn, who is owned by Microsoft, and pretty much everybody in this call probably has an account and leverages it, decided not to use Azure and to go a different direction because they didn't trust the uptime of their own parent company's solution. So who is Wasabi? Wasabi's, we talked about, is the world's fastest pure play cloud storage company. We provide hot cloud storage, that's S3 object storage. We have over 60,000 customers, and we basically support a broad range of verticals. Our biggest is data protection. Companies like Catalogic rely on us to store their customers' data securely in the cloud. But we also do things with M&E, media and entertainment. We do things with surveillance, because that's part of security, is having access to that footage for periods of time to look for trends. And then finally, we do a lot of stuff, I guess you would, in Europe especially, but in the US with both the Boston Red Sox, Major League Baseball, and the Liverpool Football Club, LFC. So we are branching out into other areas where there's lots of media to store, videos and things like that. And so we're excited to partner with Catalogic so that you can have secure backups to help mitigate the issue of ransomware. And again, I think the biggest thing that we talk about, and we'll talk a little bit more, is that it's predictable. We charge you for what you store, not the way you use it. So you're not paying for egress and or API calls. As you'll see on this next slide, the cost of egress can eat up your budgets in ways you don't even realize. 27% said they incurred higher egress fees than expected. So you have stored data and you think, okay, I'm storing this amount of data, I can budget for it, but then I need to get a copy of it to do, let's say with Catalogic, a disaster recovery drill, which is what you should be doing, testing it out. And all of a sudden you get a big bill, surprise bill for that data that you pulled back. Operations fees, every time you want to go and take a query of it, you want to do a list of what's in there, you want to do a stuff on what's immutable, how long it's going to last, you're paying fees. API call fees, retrieval fees. So even though you pay for egress, you're also paying for the commands that you use to start the egress. So it's sort of a double taxation. And I like to say, it's sort of funny, is that, well, I think it's funny, and everybody else does, is that when you use a traditional hyperscaler, they're holding your data for ransom. You're using it to protect against ransomware, but they're holding it for ransom. So unless you pay their fees, you don't get it back.
Yeah, Robert, sorry to interject. I think this is a huge benefit just in terms of the not incurring these additional fees. I think when we started supporting cloud object storage as an alternative to tape-based destinations for those users that were looking for that disk to tape, and now it's disk to cloud-based strategy, the expectation was I'm never going to have to restore from this tape or from this cloud, right? I'm keeping all the data that I need to on my primary storage repository. So tape and cloud in their minds were kind of this piece where they were not looking to restore from that often, right? But when they would have to restore from it, it's these hidden fees, right? In terms of getting the data back from the cloud object storage vendor that pretty much killed them. They were running up tens of thousands of dollars in fees, and they were only using that as their emergency-based restore. So that is the fact that you guys have no egress fees, the transport fees, or these query fees is a big bonus from a storage perspective in leveraging the cloud for that storage.
Yeah, that's a great point. I almost equate them to on your cell phone bill or on your cable bill, the junk fees, or even if you buy a house, for example, all these fees that you can't dispute, you have to pay, and there really isn't a lot of value in them, but you're having to pay them. And I know that none of us like to do that, but in this case, if you use one of the major hyperscalers, you don't really have a choice. But you want to be able to do things like practice your restores. You want to be able to practice disaster recovery. And if you have to be penalized to do that, it's crazy. In here, this will show you, we have a calculator you can go to if you want to learn more just about the cost, but it's crazy. In this case, we looked at 1 petabyte of storage with about 20%. So you're pulling 20% back, which is be the normal way of doing business. Some executive deleted something, a server went out or crashed, a drive crashed on your prem. You want to test DR and stuff. So let's say 20%. Oh, it's going fast. And all of a sudden you're charged, look at that. It's from $85,000 to $500,000 in the difference. It's really crazy. And the risk of ransomware to your data and business is a lot of different ways that are coming in, and they're being more creative about it. You have things like phishing emails, you have remote server attacks, third-party contractors. If you let people into your environment, things can go wrong. They can make a mistake, or they can be a bad actor. And then even USBs, I don't think that's prevalent anymore, but the USB where they would put them in the parking lot and stuff. And so businesses basically will lose data. Leadership turnover. You've had instances where CISOs have been fired, and in one case, there's one being charged by the federal government for misleading customers on the breadth and the depth of the data breach. And so that person could go to jail for not being prepared and not being transparent. And then finally, business disruption. When you can't transact business, think of a pizza parlor, for example, gets hacked. Like my favorite pineapple pizza, that there's always a lot of dispute over is pineapple go on pizza or not. But 20 days with not being able to send pizzas out, or 20 days without being able to restock shelves or transact business and things like that. And it gets really expensive, and someone's going to have to pay. The business was going to have to slim down, or they're going to get rid of people for that. So my final slide before I turn it over.
Before you move on, I have one question, if I may. Of course, I would like to remind our reviewers that they are free to ask their questions as well. Keep in mind the chat area is your area, and feel free to put your questions there, and our experts will surely address them throughout the webinar. My question relates to that creativity that you, Robert, mentioned at the beginning, because I believe that it refers not only to people seeking for solutions that can protect them, but also to criminals themselves who are becoming more and more creative these days. Pretty much it looks like an arms race, doesn't it?
It does. As fast as you can come up with some solution to protect against the latest whatever threat, they're innovating. And I'll give you a great example. Wasabi just released a unique feature in cloud storage called MUA, multi-user authentication, multi-user authorization. And what it does is that when the thieves can't get at the immutable storage because you can't encrypt it or delete it and stuff because it's set for a period of time, the next thing they're going after is the account. So if they can compromise your environment, they can compromise, let's say, your backup person that owns the account and delete the account, thereby deleting all of the data. But with multi-user authentication, you can actually specify a couple other security people that have to all approve that, thereby thwarting their ability to delete your account. And we're hearing that's more and more what they're doing. So having innovative features to stop them, as like you said, in this arms race from going to the next thing and the next thing is one of the values. And I think within the breadth of what Catalogic is going to show us in a minute is there's a lot of great technologies as well as procedures and things that they've learned to be able to pass on in their solution and your solution to do that.
That multi-user authentication process kind of sounds like that nuclear switch, right? The two turnkey switch that users the keys aren't held by one single person, right? So
And
that's a
they're
great
far enough
feature,
apart that one person can't do both at the same time. Yeah, yeah.
right? Exactly.
And then finally, this is the last one. We sort of talked about it. Is the best practices is to have basically a 3-2-1-1. 3 copies of the data, 1 stored on your main system, 2 in other locations, preferably 1 in the cloud, and 1 immutable. So that if for some reason they go after and get into your account, they can't delete the file, and then go work their way backwards to delete everything else. And or in this case, make sure that in fact that they don't have the ability to even delete the account using MUA. So again, it's always trying to stay one step above, ahead of the bad guys, and that's done through research, great engineering on both sides, and innovation. So with that, you need a partner, and a partner with great technology to protect all those SaaS apps, those apps in the cloud. And Catalogic is that partner. Martin.
Yeah, actually, before you move on to that slide, Robert, can you just go back to the previous slide on that 3-2-1-1? Yeah, so I think this is really important because these were the fundamentals that Catalogic and DPX were designed upon. This idea of keeping 3 copies of your data across 2 different types of storage media, one of them offsite, one of them being immutable copy. So it's actually 3-2-1-1. But it's those principles from which Catalogic was designed and how we grew up in the industry and how we wanted users to make more use of their data, but let's just go into the company slide first and give you a better idea as to what Catalogic software is. If you could just go to the next slide there.
Yeah, before
Robert.
you do that, I want you to talk about it when you do in your session too about runbooks, because testing is as important as backing it up. So you're not surprised at the day you actually have to recover and you realize you have no clue what you're doing, or it's too complicated, or it's too expensive.
Great point. Yep, I'll be sure to include that. And DPX and V Plus and Cloud Casa all have like great feature functionality in order to help you create those run books or spin up test dev environments and remove possibilities of shadow IT even forming, right? These environments where people just spin up and kind of forget about, and they're outside of the domain of IT infrastructure. But just a brief overview of Catalogic software. As I said, we've been in the business of developing and marketing data protection software for nearly 3 decades now. We have customers across the globe. Each one of our products that we have in our portfolio suite, DPX V Plus, which is more along the lines of, so DPX is more along the lines of on-prem data protection, V Plus, more along the lines of protecting those software as a service, cloud-based sites that Robert was referring to, where it's that shared responsibility model. Hey, I'm not going to lose your data, says the cloud vendor, but I'm not saying you're going to be able to restore your data either, right? So you're going to need that backup application that we can provide through V Plus. And Cloud Casa is more along the lines of Kubernetes data protection. But again, with each of these products, we can leverage the storage that is available from Wasabi and from Cloud Object Storage as our backup repository, either in as a primary or I'm sorry, a secondary storage container where we're backing up directly to Wasabi, or as a tertiary storage container in which we're taking advantage of backing up to an on-prem storage repository and then archiving that off to cloud or tape in a for long-term archival. So let's talk about this data protection concept, right? So with Catalogic, we are a data protection product. What we want to do is we want you to back up more frequently. We want you to maintain these recovery points, but also at the same time, ensure that the recovery points that you are storing, either on-prem or in the cloud, are sound, right? And we have several features built into the DPX solution, from ransomware discovery and detection, what we call guard mode, being able to instantly repurpose and reuse these snapshots that we're storing within your data protection backup. So we can use our snapshots for instant recovery, map them up to, let's say, new machines as logical or local mount points, or even use them for server imaging purposes. Let's say you want to do bare metal recovery lay down a snapshot on top of a blank machine, or spin up a virtual machine, or spin up a snapshot as a virtual machine. All these are going to help with that run book that Robert had pointed out earlier, right? Being able to reuse and repurpose your snapshots so that they're more than just an insurance policy, right? If things go wrong, you're going to be able to restore, but now you can take advantage of these snapshots and spin them up for test dev or disaster recovery purposes and testing from a multi-purpose snapshot aspect.
It's a great thing. Using the analogy of sports, that I watching a football game last night that was pretty lopsided, but they just don't come in the game and play. They practice, they test things, they make sure that the new plays and stuff, and you have to do that in your environment. You can't just say, okay, I backed it up, and if I need to recover it, I'll do it. You need to practice that, because you know that it's going to happen, and you want to make sure that you're not caught by surprise, or that you didn't misconfigure something or whatever. You want to be able to test that. That becomes critical.
Yep. So if you could skip to slide 17 there for me, Robert.
17? Oh.
Yep. So I just want to go through a solution architecture overview here of DPX, right, from this 3-2-1 perspective. But what we're doing in terms of our backup and how we're able to leverage these multi-purpose snapshots is we're backing up to our own software-defined storage appliance called DPX vStore. Now, from vStore, we can spin up these incremental snapshots as virtual machines, as local disk drives. And from a cloud object storage perspective, right, you might be archiving to tape today. I see some customers on the phone that are primarily using tape as their secondary backup destination. But now, as cloud gets introduced and we have options like Wasabi that don't have those egress fees, and really all you want to do is ensure that you can restore from a backup and you can keep long-term archival, but you don't necessarily want to deal with the headache and the hassle of paying the maintenance on your tape libraries or purchasing tape drives, making sure that they are clean. You just want to ensure that the data is there and you're able to recover from them. And that's kind of where this concept of Wasabi and doing this 3-2-1 backup to Wasabi Cloud comes into play, where we're, as a catalog, right, because we're Catalogic, right, we're keeping a catalog of all your backup data, where it resides. We're going to know that that data resides in Wasabi Cloud, and we're going to be able to bring that back long after it's expired from our vStore device.
Yeah, I think it's important. I came from tape, and tape had a lot of benefits back in the day before there was a disk solution, before there was a cloud. But when you do it in tape, you have to put those tapes somewhere secure. You can't leave them in the library. You typically will put them in a salt mine somewhere, and that takes time and disruption. And then you have to mount the tapes, make sure you have them in the right order. And that's the hard part, is that just takes time that you can't do business because you haven't been able to restore your environment.
Absolutely. And some customers were paying fees for tape companies to take their tapes offsite. Some users were storing them in some closet somewhere, not knowing kind of where they were. So it kind of presented a lot of challenges and issues with regards to recovering from tape, even if you had that tape. And in the case of, I think cloud object storage definitely made it a lot easier. It's kind of funny. I know that you had mentioned too, Robert, that Deep Glacier is actually just tape drives in the back end. That would explain why it's so slow, right? from a recovery perspective. But I mean, tape is not going away. But I think as users start to evolve and start to rethink their backup and data protection strategies, they're going to start looking at using the infinite storage resources of the cloud. So that's one of the reasons.
You bring up an excellent point. Deep Glacier, for example, and some of these really inexpensive storage tiers are great unless you ever want to pull a tape back, and then it's like 10x the cost of what something like Wasabi is just to pull that tape back. Sort of a funny story. It tells you, they've been in this industry for a while. When I was in the tape library business, we had a customer in New York that kept complaining of all of the data corruption on their tapes, and we had problems. We replaced tape drives, we did replace tapes, we did all these things, and it was still happening. And they sent a sales engineer out there, and ultimately figured out that the cart that they were using to move the tapes to and from wherever they stored them was so dirty. And when they would put the tape heads down on the dirty cart, every time they picked that tape up and put it into the tape library, it was adding dirt and dust that would get on the heads of the actual tape drives themselves. And so they caused their own problem just because of something that was totally outside the bounds of backing up their data. It was the transporting and moving the tapes around. Yeah.
So
Okay.
great points. I think we, beat the tape.
I'll be honest. I used to work for a tape library company for 8 years, so hey.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't think tape is ever going away, but there's just so much capability right now that if you're truly looking for, an archive solution, I mean, air gap, I think, it can't be beat from air gap perspective, but even with some of the technologies that are now coming out with S3 object lock, for example, this immutability aspect of cloud storage, right, where you're able to prevent tampering of these archive snapshots, and DPX is able to take advantage of these object lock libraries provided by Wasabi to essentially lock the snapshot, right, and prevent any tampering, prevent any writes occurring within the snapshot, so that if you did ever have to recover from an archive backup, let's say you lost your vStore, you lost your on-prem resources, and now you just need to, or you just need to pull back a file from data that you were keeping for years. This is one of those scenarios where, hey, I don't ever expect to restore from this, but because I need to, I meet some certain compliance or audit request, I have that data. And we see this a lot in like the state and local and education accounts that we work with, right? This ability to archive, and an S3 object lock is one of the nice things in terms of making those snapshots completely immutable and just preventing tampering with those snapshots.
And it's interesting you say that. I was at a conference for education a couple weeks ago in California, and they have to store student records and student chats for almost forever now, because one, they have to be able to provide them to a higher level education or to companies should they want to find out, if someone says, I went there, I went to school there, I got this grade. But also if there's ever any things in the future where someone said, back in school, this happened, they have to be able to restore all of that data to show what did or didn't happen. It's crazy. I mean, I love it because it consumes a lot more of my storage and stuff, and it basically pays your salary too. But the fact that they have to do that is a little eye-opening.
Yeah, I mean, we encounter a lot with the school districts here in the territory that I support, right? They need to maintain the data for the life of the student. So they've set this grandfather, father, son scheduling scheme where, they're keeping the bulk of their data, let's say for the semester, but then every semester or every month, what they'll do is they'll archive that data for, let's say, a few years or 2 years, but then let's say if the life of a student is 13 years within the district, right, they're going to keep those yearly archives or let's say semesterly archives for those 13 years, right? So again, this is one of those examples of data that you really don't expect to restore from, but it's there just in case. And my catalog says it's there because I ran a backup, I ran an archive to it. So that's one of the benefits of doing that archive and taking advantage of that object storage, that infinite object storage there.
And you make it immutable, that you can prove that it was never tampered with during that time.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So some of the features that we have within DPX, we call it GFR, Global File Restore, right? Where we're able to pick out individual files within the snapshot because we're basically creating a table of contents of the data file contents within the snapshot, and we're actually storing that along with the snapshot itself within object storage, so that when we go to restore or recover that data, all we need to do is pull back that table of contents from cloud object storage, and then that table of contents will be a reference, a pointers point to the data blocks within or the data objects within that storage to pull back in order to restore that file. So it's just technical details of some of the considerations that we had thought about, but it's platforms like Wasabi that enable us to extend and grow the use cases for these data protection points that we know you need to keep, it's the data is the lifeblood of your company, and you now have the option of keeping it longer for less headache than you would have had with, let's say, a tape, or managing a tape library and managing
I think
tapes.
it's an important feature though, because I mean, people change, people leave, retire, whatever, change jobs and stuff. So having that ability to go back easily and find certain things you need, not having to have that person that maybe was there when it was actually backed up, becomes critical. And you save companies a lot of headaches and time doing that.
Right. So if you could, can you just jump to slide, let's see, I just had it, 23. Yeah, this is fine. Yeah, so we'll talk about the software as a service backup. Or go back to the previous slide that you had up there, Robert, with regards to Microsoft 365. So this is kind of one of those, most of you on the phone are probably using Microsoft 365, or at least some cloud application, or looking at moving towards cloud applications. As Robert had mentioned, having this software as a service application, you're going to be tied to the data protection requirements of the service vendor, right? And most of them will guarantee that they won't lose your data, but they're also going to say that they're not going to be able to restore your data as well, right? So it's mainly just infrastructure uptime, right? And if you're looking for an individual email, a document, OneNote, something from OneDrive to recover, right? This is why you should be back in Microsoft 365. Of course, you could say, well, it might be my recycle bin, it might be, in this other temporary cache location here, but without a catalog to keep track of that data, you're going to run yourself in circles trying to recover from a failure if, let's say, some executive is now requesting an email or a file that was deleted from one of these locations. So having, and this is kind of where DPX V Plus, this is the area in which DPX V Plus plays into. The difference between V Plus and DPX is with V Plus, we're going to be able to take advantage of any object storage destination as our secondary endpoint. And if you just go to the slide 22 there, Robert, just bring up that architecture slide on this. It's really a simplistic architecture in which you can host a DPX V Plus and connect it directly to your Microsoft 365 account, and then back directly to Wasabi storage, right? So this is where your data backups for your Microsoft 365 data is going, mailboxes, OneDrive, SharePoint, right? Calendars, contacts, all that information that you would need to keep historically and maintain a catalog of can be performed with V+. So that is just a high level of some of the feature content that we have with V+ and DPX. And I guess
I want to touch on something you said earlier on the Microsoft, which you sort of recommend here. And this happened to me, but if this happened to an executive, this could be a sort of a, what do you call it, a resume generating event. I was working on a PowerPoint file that was shared through Teams and stored in OneDrive. Microsoft had a glitch. It corrupted the file, but when you use the feature of going back to each kind of point in time where they collected, every one of them was corrupted, and it would crash my system every time, and I had to recreate it. Okay, I'm just a person, no big deal. It was painful for me. But if your executive comes and says, hey, I can't do that, and you can't bring back a copy for them that you backed up with Catalogic, that could be something that could affect your job security there. So this is the technology, because it's these executives that sometimes will do something on purpose, or not on purpose, sorry, inadvertently, or something, let's say, with like Microsoft glitching, and you need to have a plan to be able to meet their needs, because they don't care why you can't do it. They just care that you can't do it.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So
Martin, I have a question. Actually, I have a message and a question. A message, obviously, to our guests who are with us. I just like to invite you to ask questions to our experts. Robert, Martin are today here for you, experts at hand, so please take the advantage of it and ask your questions in the chat area. And my question relates to a, well, hypothetical situation that I am a long-time existing DPX customer and I like to configure it with Wasabi. Is it an easy thing to do, or there are any challenges, any things I should take under consideration along the way?
Super easy. So great question. So if you're already an existing DPX customer, the only thing that you would need to do is sign up for a Wasabi account, and all we need is that Wasabi endpoint to target our backups too. So nothing really changes from a data flow perspective. Let's say you're doing disk to tape today. If you know the structure of that and how that's defined within our job definition, the only thing that you would need to do from a configuration perspective is add that Wasabi endpoint, and you would also need to create a bucket within Wasabi. So when I recently created a Wasabi account, I say this is probably a year or so ago, but it was very simple for me to sign on to Wasabi's website, create an account. It took me less than 10 minutes, and then just simply create a bucket. And then the user interface is very much intuitive, that I can enable additional features like object locking for that. But in my job definition, I would just point it to that endpoint, and now my backup job, instead of doing a disk to tape flow, is now doing a disk to cloud flow. Everything else remains the same from an end user perspective. If you need to restore, let's say, data that has now been archived in the cloud, you're going to define your restore job definition in the exact same way, meaning that if the data doesn't reside on-prem, or the catalog doesn't detect existence of that data being on-prem, on vStore, or on tape, it's going to know to automatically go to Wasabi to pull that data back.
Hey, and now, Martin, you need to go back to that account that now you have the added feature of the multi-user authentication and turn that on. I think Marcin and maybe somebody else to be the people that have to approve it. So if the bad actor comes in and tries to delete your account, they can't do that either.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know you don't want to lose all those cat videos that I know that you're storing up there.
Right. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to out you in public, right?
Just
the secret has been revealed.
But yeah, so it's actually a great option to have, right? Even if, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but is there a free tier, like a certain amount of data with Wasabi that you can just trial it out?
Yeah, so on the slide coming up, we'll have the ability, you can go and for 1 month, you can get 1 terabyte for free, no credit card, anything like that. You can play with it, you can test it out. They can pair it with your solution and just see how easy it is to work, how secure it is, and how it's going to make their life that much easier. And then they can start planning, on what they're going to do with all that savings.
Robert, could you please, because I believe that at the end we have some contact details as well as the link to that calculator, cost calculator that you mentioned at the beginning. I think that would be exactly.
Well, a great place to go, and you'll get it after this, we'll send you an email with these links and stuff. But if you go to the Wasabi site, there's a link on pricing where you can easily put in how much storage you need to store, and then how frequently you're going to egress it. Let's say 20% is usually pretty industry average. And you'll see the cost differences between storing it in Wasabi versus some of the hyperscalers out there. And I showed it earlier, but you'll see it's dramatically different in pricing. And the one there, it was almost $500,000 average for the 3 big ones, and it was $85,000 for us. So all of a sudden, you're saving over $400,000 of money that can be reallocated to other things like employee retention bonuses and raises and things like that, as well as new software licenses or profit sharing back to the investors. One of the questions that I get too, and it sort of has been talked about, is when you talk about security, what is sort of the best practices? And we like to talk about what we call defense in depth. And it's an industry term, we've heard it before, but it's doing, in the case of Wasabi, 3 things. One, it is utilizing MFA, multi-factor authentication, where for anything that goes on to log into your account, you have two paths to authenticate who you are. You have your password, and then you have some kind of authentication app or something that comes to your phone or things like that as an added layer to prove who you are. The second one is immutability. Turn it on. It's free. It doesn't cost anything, and you can lock a file down for whatever period of time you need, so that you know that during that time, nothing can be deleted, encrypted, changed, or anything, so that you know when you go to it, if it's immutable, that what you put in there is what's still in there. It's not been changed or tampered with. And then finally, the multi-user authentication, knowing that if they can't delete the actual file, the next target will be going after the admin account for that. And these guys are smart. I mean, as we talked about, they're not stupid. They're making a lot of money and they have a lot of skills. Unfortunately, using those skills for the wrong, the wrong side of the law. But by having the MUA, you can designate up to 3 different security people in your organization that have to all get together in a quorum, and all of them have to approve any kind of account deletion. So those are the kind of defense in depth. And then making sure that within the Catalogic side that you do similar things, where that you do use MFA, that you do protect it, that you do know that's the lifeblood of the company, and do all the steps that Martin can talk about to make sure that both your backups are happening as well as that the data is protected.
Yeah, that's a great point. And just to highlight something else here, Robert, before I close, is we've been talking a lot about ransomware and protecting data, ensuring its viability, right? And while we didn't go through it in great level detail, we have this feature, ransomware governance feature called guard mode that comes along with our agent. So think of it as just a process that is running alongside of our agent that is actually monitoring the file system activity that's occurring directly on the file system. And from that, we can make a determination as to whether or not that file or the data that is being written to the file system violates a threshold or a rule set, a block list. We use block lists, we use honeypots in order to determine like what is actually occurring on the file system. For you existing DPX customers on the phone, this is something that you are able to take advantage of for free. It's just another one of those features that can help you ensure that the data that resides on your, not only on your file system, but within your backup as well, and within the archive recovery point is viable, and you can recover from it. So if you haven't checked it out already, I highly recommend that you just go to our website, download the guard mode agent. Very simple to install Shield or just a script installation for Linux. But again, it's just that process that can provide you with that additional level of comfort for protecting your data.
No, that's an excellent point, because we have all these great technologies, but you have to use them all. You have to use all of them, because you never know what avenue the bad guy's coming in from. So having all of these, including warnings becomes critical to success of your company. All right.
Right. As I was listening to your conversation, I was noting down some closing thoughts, some insights, and surely, first thing first is that criminals don't sleep. There is an arms race when it comes to different means that, those criminals can actually destroy our businesses, steal our data, and so on. That's why it's mandatory to look for solutions that are reliable, effective, but also can be cost effective. So if you manage SaaS application data, you should consider using Catalogic and Wasabi, as they can give you the ultimate protection for your business, especially if you can be equipped with experience and knowledge from guys like Robert Callaghan, Martin Fan, that are out there for you, willing to give you a helping hand whenever you want. And I believe that you can also reach out to both Robert and Martin afterwards, after our webinar, if you have any further question. And also for more details, I invite you to go to our websites, wasabi.com and catalogicsoftware.com. Robert, Martin, anything to add at the end?
No, just thank you so much for inviting me. I had a great time. It was great talking to you, Martin. And I hope that the people on the phone will take to heart some of the stuff we shared and make sure they're, added this extra layers of protection.
Likewise, Robert, and thank you for coming to the webinar and sharing your thoughts on Wasabi. I know this partnership has been great to us, and has provided us with an additional avenue for helping our customers reach their data protection goals. So really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
And everyone else is on the phone as well.
Robert Callaghan, Senior Product Marketing Manager, Wasabi, and Martin Fan, Field CTO, North America, Catalogic. Thank you so much. Thank you all for joining us. This webinar will be soon available on demand. We'll send you the link. And that's a wrap. Thank you and see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone.